Alright, YouTube. So this is what I'm really excited about. If you watched my first two videos, you would know in the first video I said this page will be predominantly a horror movie page. But, I'm a fan of all cinema. And I made the first two videos basically because since it was my first two videos, I wanted the algorithm to kind of bump a little bit, and the Fantastic Four videos just came out. But until October's over, I'm going to be a little selfish, and I'm just going to talk about all types of old and somewhat new horror movies and new ones that come out as well. But before I get started, if you can see behind me, I got, a couple decorations up, but these news articles on the wall, they're horror based. You see, you got Freddy Krueger right there, Michael Myers right there. You got all types of stuff over there. I know that 17 subscribers don't seem like a lot, just getting 40, 35 views on a video don't seem like a lot. But this is what I really love to do, and this is really something that, even if I never get a lot of people around me support me, it's something I'm still gonna do because of how passionate and how much I love movies and stuff. So anybody who comments on this video, even if I only get 3 comments on the video, I'm gonna give this away to somebody, whether they're around me in person or I gotta send it to somebody. This is an American Werewolf in London news article, basically an article replicating what would have happened in real life if the movie happened. So that's just a thank you for people being around me. And then I'm going to do the same thing once I get to 50 subscribers for this Pennywise framed picture. So anyways, Scream is my favorite horror movie of all time. When I was a kid, this is kind of a messed up story, but I'm just going to kind of give you the backstory on it. So, my mom and dad were separating when I was 5, 6 maybe, I want to say. When she would leave for work, I would have to stay in the room and lock the door. The only DVD we had was the Scream trilogy, because this was way before Scream 4 came out. So, every day, all I would watch was Scream 1, 2, and 3 out of sequence, and then the only other DVD I had was Alien vs. Predator. So that movie has a lot of substance to me too. But every day I would watch Scream 1, 2, and 3 just out of sequence, I probably was Ghostface maybe 7 times when I was a kid, you know what I mean? So me telling you that, as much as this, franchise means to me, I really don't think there's one bad movie in the franchise. I will say, though, Scream 5, just to get off the ranking, jumpstart the ranking, Scream 5 is definitely number 6 for me. I know that subjectively a lot of people think this movie is really good. And I understand that, because at this time, Scream 2022 was the first requel after Halloween 2018, and Halloween 2018 was amazing. I'll get to those movies soon, but I don't know, something about Scream 5 just doesn't feel like there's a lot of chemistry in the movie. Once you get to Scream 6, the core 4 is they're established. Scream 5, you don't get to see Sydney or Gale, and you see Gale probably about 40 minutes in. You don't see Sydney until about an hour and 15 minutes in. Sydney gets a little, badass role in the last 7-8 minutes of the movie, but the movie doesn't very, very much feel established to me. The highlight of that movie to me is when Kyle Gallner's character gets killed behind the bar to Red Right Hand, and they show the silhouette of Ghostface raising the robe up. But Scream 5 doesn't have a lot of weight to it to me. They killed Dewey, and that feels like what the movie's known for almost. It feels like when you think of Scream 5, you think about, oh man, fuck, they killed Dewey. You know what I mean? So it's I don't know. I did not like it the first time I watched it in theaters, and then I started to like it more and more and more as I watched it. I really like the opening scene. I like the creativity of that. But yeah, Scream 5, man, like I will say I appreciate it more as I watch it, but it's just not gonna come any higher than any of these other movies. So I'm gonna give you a reference. So say Scream 5 at number 6, I'd probably give that like a cool 7. So Scream 6, I'm gonna give that like a 7.5. But the difference between those movies is I think Scream 5, the third act of that movie is a billion times better than the third act of Scream 6. Like Scream 6, when I first was watching that movie up until like an hour and 35 minutes into the movie, I was like, this, and maybe even like an hour and 40 minutes in. Because Scream 6, if you know what I'm talking about, every scene is so intense, it's so aggressive, it's so violent. You know, you got like the opening scene where they fake you out, you know, and then just say you got like the bodega scene. You got the scene with the where they put the ladder trying to cross over the apartment buildings, even down to like the train sequence. All those are amazing. And then you get to the last part of the movie where they reveal the killers, and it's just like, what the fuck happened? Like what happened? Like I really would like to understand. Like it seems like they had 75% of an amazing movie made, and then it was just like, well, we got like, you know, a couple of days till this shit's got to be wrapped, so let's just go ahead. Like, and what pisses me off about that the most is, okay, so it's Scream 6 is a ripoff of Scream 2. Let's be honest, motivation, everything, right? Having the final battle be in the museum of all the Ghostface killers, that's cool, but that's another problem I have is, so this police officer changed his last name and somehow became a cop in New York, but also he stole all this evidence and helped his son have a museum because he was fascinated by serial killers. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? But right after that, you know, nah, fuck no. I'm not gonna skip over this. This is the last gripe I'm gonna say about Scream 6. When they're on the edge of the damn tunnel, or bridge walk, I meant to say, right before, you know, the good part of the movie I'm about to talk about at the end, Melissa Barrera's character has a knife and this man has a gun. He screams and runs at her and then gets tackled like Ray Lewis off of a bridge onto the ground. He gets knocked out. Melissa Barrera goes and dresses up like Ghostface and then does a really cool scene. But what the hell? Like, that could have been completely avoided. Like, I guess I'm glad that happened because we got a cool scene right before, like, you know, Sam and Tara sit there and have a conversation about, like, you know, sisterhood and everything. But, like, I don't know, man. Like, that movie really, I gotta move on because if I don't, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna keep stressing about the ending of that movie. But Scream 6 comes in at 5th. Now, Scream 4 comes in at number 4, but I will say, Scream 4 was the first Scream movie I got to see publicly at the drive-in. I guessed that it was Macaulay Culkin's character. I said Macaulay Culkin. Not Macaulay Culkin. What is it? Rory Culkin. Whatever. One of the McCulkin motherfuckers, bro. I guessed it was him literally within the first, like, 20 minutes of the movie. And it was because the guy who had the headset on, Robbie, I knew for a fact. I was like, nah, he's a little too goofy. But the other guy being a movie buff, I was like, oh, that's him. I literally have this distinct memory of me sitting in a lawn chair sitting next to my stepbrother telling him, I was like, yeah, that's him. But I will say, Scream 4, if I was to say Scream 5 was a 7, Scream 6 be 7.5, I will say Scream 4 comes in at about like a 8.8 for me. And the reason it's ranked higher than the next movie is only because of the ending, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because the ending of Scream 4, right, being Jill, where they were setting her up to be the next Sidney, and then they make it seem like, you know, you would think that Jill, you know, especially in today's horror movies where they make them and you know there's a sequel. If Scream 4 came out today and Jill, you know, you would be like, oh, they're setting it. Sidney might die because they're setting Jill up to, you know, be the next protagonist. Her being the killer blew my mind. I'm not gonna lie. I can't. There's not one single person who could sit me down and be like, oh yeah, when we were watching that movie, I knew it was gonna be Jill. Like, no, bro, you can't say that. And there's always been people ever since new Scream movies came out talking about it might be Sidney this time. Sidney might be the killer. They low-key did that, but without deliberately doing it. You know what I mean? So, where they fucked up at was, if they would have ended that movie when Jill fucked herself up, and then they had plans of making a movie after that where Sidney had amnesia, she didn't die, and she started to low-key remember as Jill was like a celebrity from that, I feel like that would have been great. But making the movie 13 minutes longer with her in the hospital and all that like that, it made the movie a little bit, you know, a little bit less of a great movie to me. It still has probably the best character reveal in any slash movie I've ever seen. That's probably a hot take, but especially with the nostalgia I have for that movie, it definitely is. So moving on, number 3, which I just told you, Scream 4 barely hits my number, you know, over my number 3. Scream 2. This is where I know people who are hardcore fans of the franchise are going to be like, you know, confused a little bit, a little confuzzled. A lot of people have Scream 3 ranked at the very last of their, you know, and for a couple reasons. One, Scream 3, Neve Campbell was only able to film for 20 days. 2, it's a Dewey-centric and Gale-centric movie with Parker Posey. It feels very Scooby-Doo-ish. And 3, the movie does not make a whole lot of sense. I understand that. And I understand that Scream 2 being my number 3 is a little bit ridiculous to certain people, because it's like, you know, objectively, I will tell you Scream 2 is better than Scream 3. But what I will say is, Scream 2, okay, if you look at the original script that we're going to have, where the original killer was going to be Hallie and Derek, and then Cotton was going to kill off Sidney at the end of that movie, and that was going to be the end of the Scream franchise. But we ended up getting, you know, the story we got with Mickey and Miss Loomis. I think that story is brilliant. I really do. But what I'm going to say is, it's just like how I was saying with Scream 4 and 2. You know, 4 is barely under 2 for me. 2 is barely under 3 for me. I could sit here and talk about Scream 2 every day, all day, and tell you multiple things I loved about it. Like, I really could. But moving on to my number 2, Scream 3. That was the movie. Like I told you, I was a kid watching these movies. That was my escape. Scream 3 was the most, like, enjoyable movie for me. It really was. Like, I know most people, you know, will put it at their last. But like I just said, objectively, yes, Scream 3 is not a good movie. It's a reason it's got, like, I don't know, it's like got like a 29 or 39%. But that's the beautiful thing about movies, is everybody can have their own opinion, everybody can have their own stories, and everybody can have their own field of, you know, movies that they've, you know, experienced, but also have had be there for them, you know, and that's why I love Scream 3 so much. Number 1, obviously, Scream 1996. This shouldn't even been a question. I know it probably wasn't even a question. But 2 things I will say about Scream 1996. And I know that people have talked about this ad nauseum, like one of the greatest horror movies of all time, my favorite. The one thing I will say about Scream 1996 is them killing off Drew Barrymore, the biggest celebrity in that movie, within the first, 11, 12 minutes. And Drew Barrymore reading the script saying, I think that, I should be the one who goes first. Her making that decision almost made a revival in horror without her knowing it. Because it did. Like, Scream, like, I paused for a second because Scream 1996 made a gigantic revival in horror. But that decision about that, opening scene definitely made a gigantic impact on horror. Because, as we get older and we get desensitized and as new movies come out and stuff, it's easy to say, like, that wasn't scary, or, it's like, if somebody from, like, the 80s watched Night of the Living Dead, and they were like 13, 12, that scares them. You know what I mean? We get desensitized. One thing I will say is the opening of Scream, there's a lot of people I know that they get anxiety from that, pure anxiety from that. Like, especially down to, like, not even just like her, vocal cords being slit, but her being hung from a tree in front of her family. Like, it's just dark, you know what I mean? That there was a time period where horror was based around how many people can get killed by a big stalker, hulking man, you know what I mean? Scream really revitalized the genre. And that's why it's my favorite horror movie. And that's why it comes number one on this list. So I'm really excited because, we're approaching, I know August just recently started, but we are approaching horror movie season. And this being my favorite horror movie franchise, I wanted to start off with this. This upcoming October, I'll be doing a horror movie review every single 31 days. So, if you got this far in the video, please comment a horror movie you'd like to see a review. And I appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you next time.